So on our short trek through Georgia, we've visited several military forts, all from different time periods, all with a different story, and all of them were constructed using a similar method. And essentially, they use the earth around them to create a highly effective but affordable structure. Well, today, we're going to see something a little different, and it's this behemoth. Now, this is Fort Pulaski. Now, if the name Pulaski sounds familiar to you, well, that's because Kosmir Pulaski, who was a national hero in Poland, fought in the American Revolution on the American side. And he was considered the father of the American cavalry. He had a pretty big role into forming the cavalry into what it would become. And he would also fight gallantly at the Battle of Savannah. Now, Fort Pulaski was an American installation up until the American Civil War, when it was seized by Georgia militia, and shortly after its seizure in 1862, the Union forces would attempt to retake Fort Pulaski. And you can see this damage here. This is actually from the siege of Fort Pulaski. That is awesome. You can see, I'll zoom in a little bit here. You can just see what the Union rifled cannons did to this structure. That is awesome. I've never seen damage like this. Now, we visited several forts earlier, and they were predominantly made up of earthworks, and you didn't really see the visible damage because they could easily be repaired. But when you have a brick, wood, or a stone structure, and you're dealing with modern artillery, this is the result of it. And I believe one of the walls was actually breached in the Union siege of Fort Pulaski. Now, I like to consider the American Civil War the first modern war, and in many ways it was. You had weapons that were far outpacing the tactics of that time, especially the Napoleonic era tactics. But not only were advances made in the infantry weapons, but advances were made in the artillery pieces used. When Fort Pulaski was built in 1845, the rifled cannons didn't really exist at that time. So when the Union would start their 112-day siege of this fortress, the rifled cannons proved that this fort was quickly becoming obsolete, which was a huge step forward in military history. Now, that 112-day siege was concluded by a 30-hour Union bombardment of this fortification. And you can see 5,275 shots and shells in 30 hours. And I want you to see how Fort Pulaski looked after that bombardment. And they've obviously restored some of it, but you can see a lot of the original damage is still here. That is incredible. Now, this is saying there's still a few shells lodged in the wall. So let's see if we can go find one of those. And that didn't take long. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see it. But there seems to be what's left of a Union shell. Right, let me find it right there. Gosh, that is cool. Man, I've never seen something like that before. So like we touched on earlier, the Union would use rifled cannons, which essentially made brick fortifications such as this obsolete. And this is an example of one of the cannons the Union would have used. But Tybee Island is about a mile that way, and that's where the Union battery would have been. Wow. I mean, just look at the sheer size of this thing. And to give you a perspective, I mean, that's awesome. Now, something I want to clarify. What I mean by rifled cannon means that in the barrel itself, there would be grooves inside the barrel. And those grooves would allow the shell to spin, which would increase the range and accuracy. And that's something that was very prevalent in the small arms. In the Union muskets, the Confederate muskets, the Springfield and the Enfield would have that same rifling, which is again another example of the technology far surpassing the tactics of this time. And we're making our way around the fort. We're on the east side, I believe, and here's a few more munitions in the wall. Again, I don't know if you can see them, but there is one right in here. Looks like a shell from one of the rifled cannons here. And again, it's pretty easy to see where the shelling would come from. This is the side that faces Tybee Island, which again is about a mile that way. So you can see all the damage here. And you can see this wall relatively unscathed. So before we head into Fort Pulaski, this is a monument to the Immortal 600, which were 600 Confederate prisoners who were captured by the Union, and they were not allowed to be exchanged. And a few years earlier, before their capture, the Confederacy passed legislation stating all captured African American soldiers and officers of colored troops would not be returned. So the prisoner exchange program between the United States and the Confederacy broke down, and this is where 13 of the Immortal 600 are buried. So this piece before us is called the Demiloon, and what that was, as you can see by the illustrations, it contained a kitchen, mess hall, and a guardhouse, along with a hotshot furnace. And that's what's left of it. That's pretty cool. And this would be the structure that was present before you would enter the main gate there. So we've made our way through the Demiloon, through the sally port behind me, and now we're on the center portion of the fort, which is commonly called the parade. And this is where usually your formations would muster for accountability and things like that. But you can just see how big this facility truly is. We visited Fort Clinch not too far back, and Fort Clinch is also part of the 3rd system, but this fort is easily twice the size. So this is one of the guard rooms, and there'd be a guard room on each side of the sally port. And let's have a quick look. And here's your bunks. I just love the way that brick looks. And here's a few of the bunks, and then here's some of the mechanisms to work the main gate there. That's pretty cool. And looks like we're in the quartermaster's room. As you can see, this is where you would have excess lanterns, your signal flags, ropes, and then looks like different accessories for artillery, cleaning the barrel, loading the powder and ball, things like that. This is cool. And right next to the quartermaster's room, looks like we have a little chapel here. Nice. And looks like quarters of some sort, either officers or enlisted. I want to say these may be officers, because enlisted they'd probably be bunk beds. And we're making our way into the officers' quarters now. And as you can see, all these rooms are connected. Back that way is the chapel where we started. And, oh God. Ugh. I thought I had another set of eyes on me. And here's your commander's room. And here's one of the gun emplacements here. I believe this is called a embouchure. You have to forgive me, I'm not well versed in fort language. And something else I wanted to point out is usually the guns on the lower level were short-barreled because they were more for anti-personnel, and they had closer ranges, obviously, for anti-infantry. Now, you've all seen the sheer size of some of these guns. Well, this is how they move them around. And oh my God, look at the size of this cart. Jeez. So we're in some of the casemates here, and apparently these are pretty ineffective during the Union siege of Fort Pulaski. And once the Union captured the fort, they'd make them sleeping quarters and a makeshift prison. And just another reminder of the smoothbore versus rifle technology. Again, at the beginning of the war, most of the artillery were smoothbore, but as the war progressed, they transitioned to a rifled cannon. You can see the difference in the ordnance. Kind of takes a similar shape as a modern-day bullet, but on the smoothbore, you have the round balls. And a rifled cannon had a range of over 5 miles. So this is something that's pretty interesting. This wood piece here, I honestly had no idea what that was for, but apparently it served a purpose. And the Confederates placed this along the interior of their fort, and it provided a covered walkway and protected them from the incoming Union shells. Very interesting. Here's an example of the casemates being converted into Confederate prisons. And quick little insight into their daily rations. Our new ration of cornmeal, pickles, 75 loaves of bread went into effect yesterday. And indeed, it sounds pretty terrible. And we're just in one of the magazines now, and check this out. I believe this is what the foundation looks like without the floor. And check out this thing. I've never seen a cannon this shape before. As you can see, it's guarding the approach inside. That's the main gate into the sally port. Man, I've never seen a cannon quite like this. Looks like it traverses on this platform here. Huh, interesting. And here's some smaller loopholes, and I believe these would be for infantry. Again, you can kind of see the shape of them. Pretty narrow, so you can stick a rifle out, but chances are they weren't going to hit you. That's a pretty small opening. Here's a couple more facing the outer defenses of Fort Pulaski. And this is something that's pretty cool. Apparently, this is a dog print from the 1800s. And here it is, right here. It says the dog must have stepped on the brick before it was fired and hardened. That's pretty cool. Alright, and we're going to make our way up top. And for the sake of my musculoskeletal system, I'm going to turn the camera off so I make it up top with all my limbs. Well, I lied. I'm going to record because this is pretty cool. And we're almost to the top. And here we are. And I have all my limbs. That's a win. Man. Such a cool view. And by chance, we just happened to go up the stairwell that is located near some of the damage Fort Pulaski received in the shelling. Looks even cooler up close. And again, they're showing you the sheer size of the parade here. We're up on the east wall, I believe, and that is a sally port way over there where we came in, and then we worked our way around and up those stairs. So, if you're a little confused by this, this is where that gun and that system would mount. The gun would obviously be mounted in the center there, and these middle tracks would help traverse the gun. And again, just giving you another good visual, because I'm a very visual person, but you can see how these wheels would rotate on that track back and forth, and then in turn would turn the gun. And to raise or lower the barrel, you would use this guy here. You would turn that, and that pin would either push the barrel up or you can lower. It's hard to believe we're up on the east wall still. It's, you know, just hard to believe that this fort would withstand a 30-hour bombardment. And you can just see the commanding view that it would have, but also for the Union it was an easy target, especially with those rifled cannons. So it may be hard to tell, but at the end of the barrel you can kind of see damage there. And this illustration here, it's hard to tell if a round cooked off in the barrel and exploded, or if a Union shell actually hit that. But either way, it definitely caused some casualties. But just kind of giving you a layout of the land. We're obviously here at Fort Pulaski, and the Union would build almost 12 different batteries. And it's hard to see, but Tybee Island is that other body of land just past that water there. And the Confederates initially refused a formal surrender because they didn't think the Union could hit the target from where their batteries were, until they realized that they were sporting the new rifled cannons. And this is pretty cool. This is just showing you the different batteries and their locations, and looks like the trajectory of the shells and where they're impacting. And 36 big guns on Tybee Island, 1 to 1.5 miles away, converged their fire on the fort. The bombardment proved that rifled cannon could destroy masonry forts. That's really cool. And they were all in that direction. Again, in the direction of where we saw all that damage when we did our walk around outside. That was Fort Pulaski. It's really cool. It's a really cool experience. It's in a really unique area. It's on its own island. And it's really cool that this is the place that rifled cannons were first used in combat, and effectively made masonry forts obsolete, all because of these guys here. But I hope you enjoyed this one, and take care.